I hear you. Recording in progress, she tells me. Thank you very much. Senator Bruce Tarr from the State House. No, actually, he's at his remote office. And Senator, welcome back to MSO.
Thanks, Rick. It's great to be with you. It's been a while, but I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, both you and your family, and I hope you're doing well.
Well, I hope you did too. And the thing is, I was so looking forward to Thanksgiving, to the holidays this year after last year, because we were isolated. We didn't have any visitors, no family and friends for either of the holidays. And this one started off terrifically. There is some COVID connected to the outreaches of our family, not directly to us. But the good news is that it's very, very mild. And just having the Thanksgiving holiday, knowing now that we have some kind of weapon in this battle, makes me look forward to all of the holidays. And I want to ask you about your holiday and how it went, because I know you're usually pretty busy around this time of year.
Well, I am, and I would echo the sentiment that you just said. In terms of waiting for the holidays, hoping it would be different than last year, I think I was in that mode too. I think all of us were. I think we certainly are in a very different place, and a lot of that is because of the leadership that Massachusetts has consistently shown throughout the pandemic. Our vaccination rates are high. We have accessibility of testing. We have a lot of education out there about what we need to do to keep ourselves safe. And unfortunately, COVID-19 is still a very unpredictable disease. And we are seeing some changes, some variants. We've seen an uptick. Certainly as fall approached, that really is no surprise because people begin congregating in enclosed spaces again, and that creates a fertile environment for the transmission of the disease. But all of that being said, it is important that we remember being together, what it's like, how important it is, how wonderful it feels. And I had that experience over the holiday, and I was very pleased, Rick, on Thanksgiving morning to join with Commander Mark Nestor and the team from American Legion Post 3 in Gloucester to be able to prepare a meal that got home delivered to over 700 people in need. And that is just an incredible feeling to see that team pull together. Many veterans participating, and also other volunteers like me who are not veterans, but care very much about the mission that Post 3 has set out for itself, which is to help people with meals on special occasions and holidays. So that was wonderful. And then when I returned home, Rick, I found about 12 guests waiting at my home, and adapted to that as something I never really have had numbers that large at my own home. And so it was worked out quite well. And then we rolled right into, as you know, continuing the operations to get the Christmas tree ready at Kent Circle, and had a wonderful lighting ceremony with just a tremendous crowd that Sunday afternoon after Thanksgiving.
Well, so many layers of the onion to peel here, and I know that time is limited. One quick note on COVID in Gloucester on tartalk.com. You have a post that says there's free walk-in COVID testing on Emerson Ave?
There is. There's a collaboration that's been formed by a testing company called Curative, and the folks at the Open Door, which, that team at the Open Door is an incredible group of people led by Julie LaFontaine, and they always find a way to meet the needs of the community. And so they have now ventured into testing, which is critically important, particularly this time of year, as I just referenced. And so I hope folks will take advantage of that. And all the info is on my Facebook page and also on tartalk.com.
And I will link to that. And also, Senator, you mentioned leadership in Massachusetts, and at the top, it's about to change. A stunning announcement out of the State House today that Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito will not be looking for re-election. Give us a comment on that, please.
So, Rick, I wouldn't want to conceal my thoughts. I am disappointed. I've enjoyed working with the governor and the lieutenant governor. I think they have been uniquely qualified and suited to the times that we live in. They have brought a nonpartisan, common sense, practical approach to state government. They've avoided the rancor of partisan politics in favor of trying to respond to the everyday challenges that we've been facing throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And really, Rick, when you think about it, their entire administration, their entire tenure has had to address things that were not necessarily foreseen and very significant. We remember it all started with the snowstorms and the issues with the running of the MBTA shortly after they had taken office. And it's been one challenge after another, and I am deeply, deeply grateful for their partnership and their friendship, and they have served this Commonwealth extremely well, and they have established a tone and a foundation for the rest of us to be able to carry forward even after they leave office in about a year.
I would say everything you just said, Senator Tarr, and I mean this with all sincerity, could be echoed about your tenure in office as well. And I thank you for your service, because everything you just said about those two people, I think about you, and I know that we here in Gloucester do as well. So thank you for that. And let's move on now. What
Thank you.
items here that we want to talk about today?
So first of all, thank you for your kind words, Rick, and we've been friends a long time, and it means a lot coming from you. I would say that there are things happening on Beacon Hill, other than announcements from the governor and the lieutenant governor. There are two very significant ones that I wanted to talk about today. The first is a few weeks ago, the Senate, before we stopped formal sessions on November 17th, actually passed a very, very significant mental health bill. And just to give a little bit of background about that, Massachusetts was a leader among states back in the year 2000 when we established something called the Mental Health Parity Law. And the point of that law was that mental health should be treated in the same way and equally as physical medical issues. And one should not be subordinate to the other. They are both critically important. We amended that law in 2008, and we amended it again in 2014. And frankly, we continue to work to get to that goal of parity, which we have never really reached since the original law was passed in 2000. And Rick, I know you remember my friend and colleague who left us a few years ago, former Senator Fred Berry, was a champion of that idea that we should have parity. And it has been something very important to the Senate for decades, literally. And so we've passed a new bill to try to advance that goal. I'm very proud of that bill. It was a very bipartisan effort. One of the things that it does is create a database so that when someone, either an adult or a child, and there'd be two separate databases, is in an emergency room, there's a database to be able to find a treatment bed for that individual, because that's been a huge problem of people not having access to care and dwelling, or boarding is the term that's most often used, in an emergency room, which is not appropriate for a longer term setting. The emergency rooms are for triage. And so the two databases that get set up in the bill will help healthcare providers find the right place for a person to go when they're in need. And I just think that is incredibly important. It also requires coverage for a mental health screening once a year for folks, so we can be a little bit more preventative and proactive when it comes to those issues. And then a couple of things that we also focused on. One is trying to have a plan, and this has been something that's been really important to me, and also has been something important to Senator Joan Lovely, who I know you talk to once in a while. And we partnered with our colleagues to require in the bill that there be an assessment, regular assessment of the pediatric behavioral health system, because we've got several issues. They're not just regarding inpatient beds, they also have to do with outpatient care, and they need to be addressed. So the bill originally called for having a review every 5 years of the system. I amended the bill to shorten those increments to 3 years. And the reason for that is by the time you get the assessment done, you'd still have to undertake whatever the assessment recommends. And 5 years was just too long. So we changed it to 3. One of the other things that I worked on is the issue of mental health and behavioral health for our veterans. We still hear stories that are heartbreaking about veteran suicide. It should not be happening, but it does. And so I amended the bill in a couple of different places to create screenings for mental health for veterans and support after the screening is done, and also added a provision to screen for our police and firefighters who also have very stressful positions, to make sure that they're able to get screening and care. So this is a major bill, Rick, and it goes over to the House now. Hopefully they'll take it up soon. I know that they consider this a priority as well, but I'm really pleased that we were able to do that before we stop formal sessions on the 17th.
It sounds incredibly comprehensive, well thought out, and optimistic. And I One comment I would have, Senator, is that the word mental health, or the phrase mental health, sometimes has a negative connotation because people say, well, think yourself, don't be depressed, think about this. And I'm looking for a better phrase like neurological health or brain health or something, because what you said, it is a physical manifestation, even though it involves the thought process. So I'm very, very glad that you working on that in such a great way, and that there will be parity at some point.
Well, Rick, you raise an important point, because one of the things that's most important in this overall effort is to destigmatize the issues that people have with mental health, so that they will want to seek treatment. They will want to be able to deal with it and not feel like they're stigmatized. And so we are working on other terms. We often use the term now behavioral health, and that term often encompasses addiction and substance use disorder. So we are evolving terms, and getting the right ones is important. I think we've made good progress, but we still have work to do.
Very exciting stuff, Senator. Very exciting stuff. All right. Finally, what's the deal with ARPA, Massachusetts, in billions?
So we had talked a while ago about a bill that, versions of a bill that the Senate and House were doing to spend roughly about half of the money that we had gotten from the federal government as discretionary funding, and about $1.1 billion, maybe $1.4 billion of the surplus from fiscal year 2020. And different versions of that bill had been passed. And when we last talked, it was a question of reconciling those. And as of last night, the 6 conferees working on that reached an agreement. And so we are still going through the specifics of that agreement, but I think it will wind up being extremely productive. And now the legislature has a decision to make, because as I just mentioned, we are in informal sessions after the 17th. And usually we would not consider a bill that spends almost $4 billion in an informal session, and particularly a bill of this unique nature. So we now have to think about how to address that, because there is some urgency in terms of getting these dollars out so that they can begin going to work in our communities. So the legislature will be thinking long and hard about how to address this agreement now that it's been reached.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of work to do, and you crack the whip often in a very pleasant way, I guess, get people moving. And finally, Senator, before I let you go, I have to ask you about the great tree trek this year, for Gloucester, because we couldn't get our tree from Shelburne this year.
Well, it wasn't as long a trek, but it was certainly as challenging a trek, Rick. The tree actually, we could not get it due to a lot of different issues related to COVID-19 and some other restrictions. We could not get it from our sister city in Shelburne, but I assure you that we intend to keep that tradition alive. And Shelburne has been talking with us about that, and they're already looking for a tree for next year. But for this year, we needed a tree. And we had a lot of good scouting work that was done by Ted Costa, who works part-time in my office. And he selected a bunch of trees for us to look at. And the one that everyone agreed to was over at 40 Englewood Road in Magnolia, so not very far in distance. However, that 50-foot plus tree had to be taken down and moved to Kent Circle. And we're very fortunate for 2 things. Number one, the Peak family donated the tree in memory of the patriarch of that family. And there's a great story to this, because Rick Peak, who was the son in that family, got one of those little saplings that we used to get in school right around Arbor Day, and brought it home. And he and his father, Sandy, planted that tree about 33 years ago, and it grew into this amazing tree. And sadly, Sandy Peak, his father, passed away quite recently. And the family donated the tree to remember him, the father, the patriarch, and the tree is dedicated to him. And Rick, on the morning of his memorial service, an army mustered at the family home to harvest the tree. And it was quite a moving thing. The family was there. It was before the service. And we removed the tree with the help and incredible work of Dan Meyer from Meyer Tree Service, who volunteered to harvest the tree, which was very, very close to the house. The tree was here, the house was here. And Dan did a great job. Paul Wright donated the truck and the trailer to move it over to Kent Circle. And then Ken Taliadoris at Great Eastern Marine Service met us there with a crane once we got there, and lifted the tree up. And my brother Ringo did his magic and got the tree ready to fit into the base, and you can see the rest at Kent Circle. It looks marvelous.
And a lot of people showed up for that too. There was no parade. It looks like a lot of people were there.
There was a huge crowd, and it was good to see. And it was great to be able to have people get back together after what we've all been going through.
Do you remember WHDH, a DJ and a talented actor named Jess Kane?
Of course.
Well, Jess Kane used to have a skit on there about Chicken Man. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. And you're everywhere. You're everywhere.
Well, you know, Rick, being able to be part of that whole Christmas tree endeavor is just incredibly gratifying. I'm very proud of my brother Ringo, whose real name is Brent, but no one uses it. But he just had that idea, you know, years and years ago about having a Christmas tree for the entire city, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful tradition. And even last year, in the throes of the pandemic, we were able to get a Christmas tree. That one came from Canada on a ship with the tree that was donated by the people of Halifax to the people of Boston. They rode together to Portland on a container ship. But I will just tell you, it's a wonderful tradition, and just very glad to live in a community that has traditions like that and pulls together in good times and more challenging ones to keep things moving.